This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle from TGI Sports Talk right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. I welcome you guys all in on this, brisk New York morning. My guest today, Uwe von Schamann, probably will not be able to relate to that too much, at least today, while he's out in Oklahoma, but not sure what the weather he's going into. I know he's doing some traveling, so we'll have Uwe on in a second. This show will be recorded, by the way. I recorded this just so you know, full transparency on Wednesday, November 17th, with the holidays coming up and a lot of other stuff going on. I want to get a couple shows in the can so you guys can have some new content on Friday morning still. We'll still be doing our live Sunday Stream of Consciousness show at 9 a.m. Eastern time, where we cover the gamut of sports. I'll have tonight, actually, if you guys won't see this tonight, but Wednesday the 17th, I'll have my college football huddle show, which we'll probably get into Uwe's Oklahoma team a little bit and one of his arch rivals at least. And we'll have some fun with that. But for now, let's bring in my guest today, my special guest, the first NFL kicker I've had on the show, former NFL kicker or present, Uwe von Schamann. Welcome, Uwe.
Good morning.
How are you? And how warm is it in Oklahoma today? Because it's about 28 degrees here.
Well, it was almost 80 yesterday, but then it's going to be about 30 or 40 this morning. So, that's just Oklahoma weather. We've had some swings of 20, 30, 40 degrees, really? Just like overnight. But that's just living in this part of the country.
Yeah, and you're traveling, I think you told me, to Germany and maybe some other spots. What's the weather over there this time of year? I don't even know.
It's in the 30s at night and 40s during the day. So there's not much warming up.
Yeah, kind of like what we see here in the Northeast, I guess.
Correct,
right?
Yeah.
Cool. We are going to be in the 60s tomorrow, though. So anyway.
Nice.
Enough of the weather report with Keith and Uwe. I want to welcome you again. Uwe had a great career with the Miami Dolphins as a professional. Had a lot of highlights, played on a really good team, played on a national championship team at Oklahoma. And I know you're still a huge supporter of your alma mater.
Yes.
We got a bunch of stories to chat about there. Uwe, how did I know you were born in Germany. So, and I think you came here when you're 16. Is that correct?
That's correct. We came, my mother and I, who it's always been the two of us growing up. She had a friend from Germany that moved to Fort Worth. He worked for Bell Helicopter, and he always invited us to come over. So we came to visit. And while we're here, there was a local high school down the street, and I went up there, and I didn't speak English. I went up there, and I found a German teacher. And I sat in her class and just kind of experienced for a week what it was like to go to school here. And it seemed like they were having a lot more fun than we were having in Germany, with I went to my first pep rally and I go, what in the world is this? And because in Germany they don't have athletics in schools, it's all academic. No. But so if you want to play sports, you have to join a club.
Did you play outside of school in Germany?
No.
So before you got to high school in the U.S., you hadn't played any kind of sports at all?
Well, I played soccer, but it was just recreational. And I also played I don't know if you're familiar with team handball.
Yeah, a little bit.
7-on-7, It's like basketball.
Full contact sport, isn't it?
So I played that. What's that?
It's a full contact sport too, isn't it?
Well, it's it can get that way, yeah. So I played that, enjoyed playing that. And then, so while I was in school there, after a week, we had to leave. I might mention the story, how we first came here. I think it's a good story. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. So my mom she had won a trip to Iceland. I don't know how, but anyway, we decided to continue our trip to New York, and with the idea of going to Fort Worth to see her friend. So we get to New York, and Mom said, "You have two choices," which is, be a great book title. You have two choice. We have two choices. We can either stay in New York, or we can go to Fort Worth. And I grew up in Germany watching John Wayne movies, so I'm going, heck yeah, I want to go to Texas. So we had limited funds, so we decided the only way we'd get there is on a bus. We had no idea how big this country was, so we went to the Greyhound bus station. Mom gave me all the money that we had. I walked up to the cashier and I go, Texas. And so he gives me 2 tickets, and I go back to Mom, and we look at the tickets, and it said Memphis on there. I go, well, Memphis must be in Texas. So we get on the bus, and we had enough change left to just buy 4 apples, because we thought, we'd beat her that afternoon. We'd be in Memphis, Texas, right? So we get on the bus.
Popular place, by the way.
Yeah. We get on the bus. 2 days later, we get to Memphis. So the apples are gone. We're hungry. We're starving.
Oh, my.
So the only way we can continue our trip was to hitchhike. So we're downtown Memphis in the middle of the night. We each had a bag, and we started hitchhiking. So we stood there for quite a while. This guy picked us up. He was drunk. I remember he was pouring something into a Coke can. And so he dropped us off at the highway. So we stood up. By then it was like early in the morning. And he dropped us off at a truck stop. So the second guy that picked us up, he just got off work. He worked at an airport, which I found out. He took us all the way to Little Rock, which is a pretty good distance where he lived. And he realized we hadn't eaten, we hadn't slept. And he took us to breakfast. And you can imagine a 15-year-old what that looked like.
Yeah.
Having not eaten in 2 days. Yeah. And so he took us to his house and let us rest there all day long. And his wife, she was on the way to work. She was pregnant at the time. And she made a bunch of sandwiches. And he took us out at rush hour. And sure enough, this nice gentleman picked us up. He was on his way to Mexico, and he dropped us all off in Fort Worth to our friends. We knocked on the door. They didn't know we were coming.
That's funny.
So that was our first trip. First trip to the United States, and it was fun.
What? So what? I don't know if I caught it in there. I may have missed it, but I know you visited. What was the impetus for you guys deciding to come here to stay?
On the way back, I talked my mom into coming back.
You did. Okay.
So 6 months later,
well, that's
she got a job. She's always been into drafting, architectural drafting. So she actually got a job with the city of Fort Worth, making like $250 a month. And we lived right across the street from the high school, Eastern Hills High School there in Fort Worth. So that's what happened. I kind of decided, okay, Mom, we're moving. We're going. But our life has been that way. I was born in Berlin. We lived in Düsseldorf. We lived in Stuttgart. We lived in Mannheim. We lived in Luxembourg for 5 years. So we've always been moving around. So kind of grew up with gypsy life.
Always West Germany, correct, though?
Correct, yeah. Well, we did live
in
in West Berlin. The wall was still up, and East Germany was still there. So
certainly a different time in the world.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So when you get here and you start going to high school, as you notice the difference in that one day. Was it long before you went? Did you play soccer in high school, and how did your football career come about? When I first came, I was a sophomore, 16 years old at the Eastern Hills. I was in PE class, and I'd never seen a football before. Mm-hmm. And so I punted it during the PE class, and Coach Cecil Newton, he's still alive. I talk to him all the time. Oh, God bless him.
He said, "Can he do that again?" He asked my name, and he didn't know what to do with my name. So he goes, okay. So come out for the football team. So I came out for the football team, and I did pretty well. And so I got the job, and that's how I got started. The thing about it was my junior year, I could have graduated from high school because all the credits that transferred from the German schools, I could have finished my junior year. But Coach Newton, again, Cecil, he goes, if you stay another year, you might get a scholarship. And I go, what's a scholarship? He goes, well, that's when they pay for your school, play football. And I go, you mean to tell me just to kick a football, they're going to pay for my college? I go, what a country. I love this country.
That is awesome. That wouldn't have happened in West Germany, I take it. There are no sports scholarships in West Germany at that time.
Yeah. So that's when I got recruited my senior year. And that's when Switzer came and recruited me out of Fort Worth. So
yeah. So before I go on to OU, I mean, going backwards, or not going backwards, but going back to Germany now, are things different? Are there sports in high school? Are there college, whatever the equivalent is, scholarships and that type of thing now over there?
Well, that's a good question. I really, when I travel back there, I really don't pay attention to, but I know the clubs, separate from the high schools are huge, obviously. And so that's basically where kids, play sports. And in high school, I don't think there's a lot of that. I think PE class is about it. And, but so there are a lot of clubs. I mean, when you travel throughout Germany on the trains, you see soccer fields everywhere. Every little town has a team and this and that. So.
Like we used to see baseball team fields here. We don't necessarily see them anymore. It's kind of dried up. But when I was a kid, you couldn't drive, 5 minutes without seeing a ball field somewhere, even if it was a homemade one, on somebody's property. So,
well, there's a group here in Oklahoma City. It's called Fields and Futures, and what they do is they build fields, and especially in the inner city areas. It's a beautiful project.
How often do you get back?
About every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
I was back in 19 and then skipped last year. So for obviously reasons.
Would have been a good year to skip, right? So anyway, let's move on. So you get recruited by Barry Switzer at OU. Anybody else interested in Uwe von Schamann giving them a scholarship?
And I'm sorry to have to correct you how to pronounce my name. It's Uwe.
Uwe. I'm sorry. I meant to ask
you.
That's okay. Listen, I've had trouble with Bob and John. So Uwe.
Okay, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
When you were recruited for OU, did you have any other coaches coming around and offering you full rides?
There were a couple of schools. Rice University, I made a trip there, and Baylor, they were a little interested. And oddly enough, TCU, right in my backyard, they didn't even talk to me. New Mexico, but then I think what happened was when they figured out that Oklahoma was recruiting me, everybody backed off.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize how big OU was. Everybody's telling me, you got to go to OU. You got to go to OU.
Well, you being in love with Texas, I'm assuming would love to have one of the big Texas schools to have looked
exactly.
At. Sure. And I'm sure they wish they had in retrospect. So, so now you've moved from Germany in a very short period of time now, only a few years.
6 months. Yeah, within 6 months.
You moved from Germany to Memphis, Texas.
Yeah.
Fort Worth, Texas. And now you're going to Oklahoma, this big university with this bombastic football coach. What was the transition like to that? And what was Coach Switzer like?
Coach Switzer was he was a player's coach, that's for sure. He I think probably towards the end of his career maybe been his downfall, but he was a great guy to play for. Of course, he never coached me. They didn't know how to coach soccer style. That was something new.
Yeah.
And I was one of the first ones. And so he never really had to coach me. He just told me go in there and kick field goals. So I did.
And you punted as well, I believe, right?
Yep. My junior year, in fact, during the Ohio State game that year, I punted all year long. Yes. I did all the kicking.
How much? It's funny. I was going to get to this question at some point, but I'll ask it here. How much has kicking changed since you kicked towards today. I mean, back then, I mean, if you made, I don't know, 60% of your field goals, you were making a lot. You were really good.
Yeah.
Now guys make 90% and they get cut because they're not any good. Is it the fields? Is it the balls? Is it a combination of a lot of other things?
I think it's just that they've figured out the technique. You know, when I first started, I just kind of lined up. I didn't take 2 steps back, 2 steps across. I just kind of felt like, okay, this feels good. You know, and that's the old guys like Gary Premium, you know, who I replaced. A lot of those guys that they were just soccer players and they just lined up and they kicked it like, you know. So it's become more technical and more precise. You know, it's an art because when the center snaps the ball and the holder catches it and the kicker kicks it, you're talking about 1.3 to 1.5 seconds.
Right.
So there's not much room. There's no room for error. So it's just become, you know, they never had kicking camps. Now they have kicking camps everywhere. So it's just become an art, a refined art over the years.
Yeah. Now, when you get to OU, you were on the 75 championship team, right? I don't know if you didn't play really. I don't think.
No, I didn't. I backed up the first soccer style kicker. He was from Brazil, Tony Di Rienzo, and he was a foreign exchange student. And so that was his last year. So I backed him up, and I don't know why they didn't redshirt me. You know, Switzer, when I talked to him, he couldn't understand it either. So we had a freshman team, and maybe that's what it was. Maybe freshmen weren't eligible. So we had a freshman team. We had played 4 games, 2 against Oklahoma State and 2 against TCU.
Well, you certainly, I mean, all the teams you played on were pretty good teams. I mean, Oklahoma and the Big 8 were huge at that point. And now it's obviously changed a lot. I guess I'll pit it just a little bit. When you think about your time back in the Big 8 and the huge rivalry with Nebraska, I mean, you still had Bedlam, but I don't know if that wasn't a bigger game than the Nebraska game then, was it? Or was it?
Yeah, it was. Bedlam was always probably the biggest, but Nebraska certainly was a team that we had great rivalry with. Great, you know, Tom Osborne and they had some great teams in those days as well. And it was a national game, and everybody day after Thanksgiving, it was OU Nebraska.
Yeah, I think that's why I think of that as your number one rival, because that was usually deciding the conference championship, really, right?
That's correct, yes. Now, Oklahoma State was pretty good during that time. They had a guy named Terry Miller who was second in the Heisman.
Played with the Bills,
so
right?
I think we actually tied Colorado and OSU, Oklahoma State, one year for the conference title.
Do you see, what's your feelings while we're on the college topic? What are your feelings about the all the realignment and the destruction, really, of these legendary rivalries, Nebraska and Oklahoma being one of them? I mean, they get to play here and there, but they don't play every year, the day after Thanksgiving, a tradition when I was growing up. What are your thoughts about this whole change on the college landscape? I have very strong opinions.
Well, it's it's all about money. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And Oklahoma going to SEC was just nothing that we ever thought about happening. And I think they'll struggle in the SEC. You know, I mean, look at them now. They, we just got beat by Baylor, and they just pretty much kicked our butts. You know, so every game is going to be like that in the SEC.
You get Vanderbilt every now and again, probably. So
there you go.
Every couple of years, you'll get Vanderbilt.
Exactly.
So you're not a favor of them going to the SEC, and
I think there'll be some great road trips.
Well, that's a good point.
We're not going to dominate the SEC.
No,
I don't see it happening.
I mean, they haven't dominated the Big 12, I guess, but that's a pretty competitive league. I don't know why you feel the need, or the school feels the need to go. I mean, I get it. The SEC is the glamour school, all the bright lights, everything's light shining on them. But the Big 12 is a really good football league, and I don't understand why these teams want to dismantle it and get out of it as quickly as they can. Yeah,
it's unfortunate. The fans obviously don't have a choice. They don't have a say so.
Yeah.
But again, it'll be fun going to some of those games across the country, and so I look forward to that.
Do you think it hurts the fandom at all? Do you think that'll hurt some of that the following because of the change of schools and being obviously some of those games so far away now?
Yeah, well,
Do you still see that?
Oklahoma fans have always traveled
Yeah.
well, so they'll look forward to that for sure.
Cool. Any other? Well, let's talk about this since I'm on the topic, and I'll be talking about it tonight. I mean, obviously, I think Oklahoma's chances of getting to the playoff ended last week. I don't
That's
think
correct.
they can jump that many teams. Do you think
No.
the team was as good as their record showed? I mean, my Bill Parcells always said, you know, you are what your record says you are, but Oklahoma obviously struggled with some less than stellar teams this year. Do you think that they were not as good as their record, and it shows now? Or
Yeah, I mean, even a Texas game, they had to come back that game, and then they've struggled against Kansas. I mean, Kansas was the most embarrassing probably game the first half when Kansas was just driving on them.
yeah,
And then yeah, they don't have a running. You don't have a running game, and we always had a good running game, you know.
yeah. Oh,
So we
geez,
don't have a
yeah,
running game, and we've got a true freshman now playing, you know. So it's just no. I think next year maybe we'll have a better team overall.
Yeah, you mentioned Texas. They're a whole kind of different dumpster fire right
Oh
now.
my goodness!
You can't lose to Kansas. I mean, Oklahoma struggled with Kansas, but at least they won the game, right?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Listen, we certainly can't wrap up your college career without talking about the kick in 1977 at Ohio State, when you famously were leading the crowd in cheers to block that kick, which is one of the most awesome things I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, you've got to YouTube or Google, whatever you got to do to get the video. It's a lot of fun. Tell us about that story in general. And I know you've got some memorabilia from Oklahoma and including a picture of the kick back there. So talk a little about that, would you?
We before we went up there, we had never played Ohio State before, and Coach Switzer was talking about whoever wins this game is probably going to be ranked number one. I think we're both maybe 2 and 3, somewhere in the top 3. And of course, it was the brash young coach against the old timer, you know, old school Woody Hayes.
Yeah.
And so we go up there, and we just scored 20 points just like that. You know, I kicked 2 field goals, and we scored a couple of touchdowns, so we're up 20-0. And then they come back. We fumble, you know, wishbone. You're going to fumble a few times. So we fumble. They come back, and then towards the end, we had a chance to tie it with a 2-point conversion. We didn't make it, so we have to get the ball back. We don't have a lot of time left, so I kick. I remember my coach, Bobby Proctor, who's a famous coach. In fact, he's turning 90 this month. He coached Switzer at Arkansas. He goes, where are you going to kick the ball? And I go, I'm going to kick it right over there to that guy from the second at the end, from the second at the end. So I kick it. It hits him right in the chest, and we recover the onside kick. So that's great. So all we have to do is kick field goal. So we get in field goal range, and we throw a couple of passes, and then we just run the ball up the middle to get me in the middle of the field. So it's it's up to me to win the game. So I go out there and getting all ready, and that's when I heard the crowd. They called it timeout. We actually called it timeout, and so I had some time out there. I remember going into the huddle, and there's one of my best friends, Sammy Jack Clapham. He was a big offensive lineman, and I shook his hand. And I said, "Don't worry about it. I got this." So. I just felt really confident that day. And of course, you mentioned leading the chant during the timeout. And then I kick it and I make it. And it was a great hole, great snap. And I hit it probably one of my best kicks ever. Probably could have gone 60. And Next thing I know, I'm underneath a pile of players and I almost get crushed. But one of our linemen kind of braced everybody. So, and that was it. So it was crazy. It was just crazy. And the crowd, you know, the Ohio State players were laying down on the field, and it was, you know, you could hear a pin drop. And so that was it. We win the game.
Would you call that your shining moment?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, books have been written on last, Uwe. You could write a book about this one experience, and
I've been trying to, but I can't get anybody to bite.
Really?
The OU press even turned it down. So
the book's out there. We just need somebody to buy
well,
it.
I have I've worked on proposals, and
I see.
I've sent in proposals and stuff like that. So yeah, I just I'm just gonna drop that. But it would be nice to share that with people.
We got to start a grassroots campaign to get this book published. This is too important. Too important. It's one of the monumental moments in my early. I guess I was almost an adult then, not quite. I was 17, but I remember that game very vividly as being a huge college fan my whole life. So. I'm
it's
sure.
Even followed my son, who's 30 now. He's been playing professional baseball for last 8-9 years in the minor leagues. He's been playing for the Atlantic League in York, the York Revolution, and so he got to AAA one time, and it was in Columbus, and the fans recognized the name, and the Ohio State fans.
Oh, really?
And they ask him, "Is your dad Uwe von Schamann?" He goes, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, we don't like him, and we don't like you either."
well, at least they based on their dislike for him for something important to them, I guess. So,
yeah.
You know, you mentioned the running game there. You said you put the ball on the ground a few times running the wishbone, but you'd also run for about 1,000 yards a game for crying out loud.
That's true.
It's a tremendous rushing machine out there, and you played with some on that team. You had great players. It seemed year after year. Billy Sims, obviously one of the greater players, and I always thought it was a shame he got hurt so early in his pro career, because I think he would have been one of the best. Who are some of the guys that really stand out to you, or maybe guys that influenced you and at the college level while your time at Oklahoma?
My freshman year, we still had two of the Selman brothers. I don't know if you remember the Selman brothers.
Yeah, Leroy and Dewey.
And Lucius. And
yeah.
Lucius was gone in 75, but we still had Dewey and Leroy. And Leroy's considered the best player ever in Oklahoma history. The guy was just a natural. And, of course, he was #1 pick by the Tampa Bay, and Dewey went there too. So Leroy, was very impressive. Now, we had some great running backs. Joe Washington probably should have won the Heisman, but we were on probation that year, so nobody got to see him. Archie Griffin won it twice, and I remember meeting Archie Griffin. He goes, "Yeah, Little Joe should have won the Heisman that year."
That was the 75 season you're talking about, I think, right? Yeah.
Then we had, of course, our quarterback only lost 1 or 2 games, Steve Davis. And then we had just great individual players. Jimbo Elrod was an All-American defensive end. Our defense was just dominant. Our defense was just incredible. And then our offense, we had great skill players. We had Tinker Owens, who was an All-American. He only caught like 15 passes. Billy Brooks, who was an All-American, he caught about 15 passes. So they were all highlights, So I played with those guys. And then I came in with Billy Sims. Our recruiting class was one of the best classes ever. We had, out of that team, we had 20 players that went to the pros. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, that you don't get that today. I mean, that kind of movement to the pros. Great teams.
Well, Switzer knew how to recruit Texas.
Yeah,
that was the key.
Well, I didn't ask you about the Red River rivalry, and was that as big as we know it today? The game against Texas every year, the same kind of thing as Nebraska and Bedlam.
Well, the thing was that we had so many Texas players on our team, that made it really a big rivalry, and we ended up winning 3 and tied 1, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good, obviously. Yeah, how about the game? I mean, the games, we talked about the running game. So those great Oklahoma teams, and again, I know this is an impossible question to answer, but I always feel obligated. Maybe it's cliche. How would those great teams fare in today's Big 12? But you had to play the wishbone. Nobody else plays it. I don't know if people could defend it today. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
You're right. I think Air Force might have.
I think they
run
do
the wishbone a little bit.
Yeah, Army
I remember
does
when
too,
they came here and they played really well against us. So I think the wishbone was only good for those teams, Texas, Oklahoma. You know, we changed our offense in the middle of just middle season. So wishbone has to be taught correctly. You know, you got to have a quarterback that can read and make those reads. There's a lot to it. And Thomas Lott was the best. He was our quarterback, and he was the guy with the bandana. He always wore a bandana, and fans send him bandanas, so he wore a different bandana every time.
Yeah, you had some really good quarterbacks running that, and Thomas Lott, J.C. Watt, I think followed him. I think, right? So
yeah, we had just a great time. Barry knew how to recruit, so he really knew how to recruit. He has some great stories about recruiting. In fact, we played Nebraska, and we were beating them bad in Lincoln, and Barry gets on the payphone during halftime and calls Billy Sims, who's working at a gas station, and just tells, talking to him about stuff, and Billy can't believe he's calling him at halftime to the OU Nebraska game. And finally the referee said, "Hey, you need to get off the phone," and second half starting, and so Switzer goes, "Okay, Bill, I'll talk to you later. I have to finish this ass kicking."
That's too funny. So you had a good relationship with Coach Switzer. You mentioned earlier, and I want to follow up on it, that you felt that you might have contributed to his undoing. Can you explain that?
I think there was a point where just players got out of hand, and of course the stories about when players got in trouble for drugs and weapons. I mean, people shooting off guns in the dorms and stuff off the balcony, crap like that, and
institutional control, I think we'd call it today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. He just gave them too long of a leash. And so a lot of bad stuff happened. And there are a lot of stories behind the scenes that just led him to, he had to finally resign. That was unfortunate.
Do you have a good relationship, or do you have any relationship with Coach?
Yeah, I do. I see him during events and fundraisers. I see him around town, and he always he says this all the time. He said the Ohio State game. He goes, if Thomas Lott wouldn't have gotten hurt and Billy Sims wouldn't have gotten hurt, we would have never needed you.
He seems like a good old boy when you see him, and it feel like you get his real personality when you're seeing him interviewed and whatnot.
Oh, he's very entertaining. Yeah. Very entertaining.
I thought he got a bum's rush. I thought he got a bad deal when he was coaching the Cowboys, and Jerry Jones brought him back. They'd been teammates in college, I believe, right?
Yep.
Brought him to replace Jimmy Johnson, and I feel like he got a bad deal, or doesn't get the credit he deserved for those teams. I mean, he went to the Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, went to 3 championship games. The coach can't have nothing to do with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, your leader, of course, they had a great team, great talent, and he probably just got out of the way a little bit and just let his assistants take care of that.
Right. Do you think in your conversations with Coach Switzer, does that time in his life come up at all? Do you think he enjoyed those 3 years, or he just doesn't?
No, We're not that close.
Not that close. Not
Yeah,
gonna
we
share
don't know.
scary film stories?
It's more of a, I don't know how to describe it, because we never really had a relationship in college.
Yeah.
So, but it's a good one.
Well, let's move on because you finish up a career with a guy I consider an iconic college coach, and you get drafted by a team with, gosh, one of the most iconic NFL coaches of all time, Don Shula, of course, with the Miami Dolphins. Did you expect to be drafted and playing in the NFL, first of all? Did you think you were going to be doing that?
No, I really didn't have any expectations. But I did get drafted in the 7th round, which I was surprised, especially by Miami, because they had Gary O'Premium, who was kind of their legend, and fans loved the guy.
Yeah.
And so, I went down there and said, I'm just going to do the best I can. If I get to play in preseason, maybe somebody can look at me, and then I'll go somewhere else. Well, I get down there, and of course, Garrow, he didn't even shake my hand or anything.
Well, yeah, I would think
he was talking crap about me in the paper. So I kicked the first preseason, did well. Kicked the second preseason, did well. So I kicked all the preseason games. And the way I found out that I made the team was my stuff was still in the locker, and his was gone. That's how I found out I made the team.
Well, I wonder if that's the way he found out he didn't make the team, because it was cracked up when he got there.
Uh-huh.
So you tell us, I mean, real quick, I guess, the differences. Did you see a big difference between, I think at that time in college, you were kicking off a tee, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And at pros, you didn't. I mean, was that a big difference? And
it was a big difference between, because I was still trying to I went to the Senior Bowl, and I hadn't been able to practice off the ground much. And so I did horrible at the Senior Bowl. And that's why I got, bumped down to seventh round. Remember that? I don't know if you remember that year, but it was a great year of kickers because Russell Erxleben was the number 1 pick for the Saints.
I do remember, yeah.
Yeah, and he was a bust. And then Steve Little from Arkansas, he was first round pick by St. Louis.
Well, weren't those two guys? Was Erxleben and somebody else were trading it seemed like every week in college they were trading the record for the longest field goalers. It felt like it was Erxleben and somebody else.
Yeah, Erxleben, Tony Franklin, Erxleben, Steve Little, and then Matt Barr, but he wasn't as strong. But it was Steve Little, it was Erxleben. And of course they could use their own practice balls. We had to kick brand new balls. Yeah. So they just brought in these balls that just fly,
Well, that's a pretty good kicking class right there.
It was Matt Barr was part of that too from Penn State.
Yeah.
He was part of that. And so that was it was a great year for kickers.
And coming in and playing for a coach like Coach Shula was, again, you talked about your relationship or not being a big relationship with Switzer when you were there. I got to imagine Don Shula is kind of removed, especially from the kicker, probably even more so than Coach Switzer.
Yeah, he was pretty tough on his players. He was old school. Later on in his career, he changed a little bit. He was one of the greatest coaches to prepare a team for a game. He was really amazing. Sometimes during the game, he would lose it a little bit. But, you had Don Strock, who's a backup quarterback, and he always was right there with Shula, making sure that, when Shula asked him, what play and this and that. So he kind of kept him. I don't know if you'd call it in line, but he kind of helped him. And of course, that first year, Bob Greasy was still our quarterback.
Yeah.
And we had still some. It was similar to when I came to OU. They still had that first year. Still had some of those guys that played on the undefeated team. And just like Oklahoma, we had a great team in '75, and then the new people came around. When I made the team, we had I think 11 or 12 new players that year.
Yeah.
So I didn't start out too good. I was 4 out of 8. And then, of course, I thought they were yelling my name, but they were actually booing me.
Well, that's probably an advantage, I guess, to having a name that sounds like
Right.
Bill.
Yeah. But then I turned it around. I made 10 in a row and ended up being Rookie of the Year for the Dolphins. So I did turn it around that year.
Well, that's got to be a good feeling to do that.
Yes.
Again, played with some great players. You just mentioned Bob Greasy at the end of his career, and a few years later, I mean, actually, you guys go to the Super Bowl. I'm going to say you went to the Super Bowl twice during your
Yes.
time. Right during the strike year, you guys went to the Super Bowl.
That's right.
David Woodley and Don Strock, I think, sharing the duties. What was that season like with the strike? And you had a really good football team, and then you had a kind of a heartbreak in the I was going to say the World Series. Good grief, the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that 81 season and the strike season.
What we did was we made sure as a team that we would practice on our own. I think that's what probably did. In fact, I was on the scouting team. I was the quarterback on the scouting team, which they go, you can actually throw the ball. Yeah, I can actually throw the ball. So we just made sure that we stuck together and practice every day. And so that's probably what helped us.
And getting to that Super Bowl, I mean, John Riggins obviously was a tremendous player, and obviously the difference in that game, especially the one that put the dagger in your heart there on 4th and 1, I guess.
Yeah,
we ran for the touchdown. What was it like getting to your first Super Bowl? Was it the atmosphere? What I was just starting to grow into what it's obviously become, but I think it was still a huge deal, obviously back in 1981. What were your thoughts? Were you really nervous? Did you have confidence you were going to win that game?
Yeah, we felt pretty confident. We felt really confident. We played in the Rose Bowl, which was really amazing. It was 105,000 people. And I got, of course, when we went to Super Bowl, you know, as former players, they get people from that you hadn't heard from in years and, you know, wanting tickets. So my mom went and some of my friends went, and it was a great experience. It was just the fanfare and all that. And it was, I think we only had a week.
Yeah,
to prepare. Yeah. I think. I'm not sure.
I think so, because they added a layer of playoff rounds because of the short season, I think.
Yeah. So that was kind of good because, you know, 2 weeks, that's a long time.
I thought they would do that forever for a while, it seemed like, but I think they like that. You know, the league likes that build up, I think. I don't know about the players. I would think stay more on schedule, right?
Exactly.
You know, I skipped over actually the year before where you guys played that amazing playoff game in the divisional round against San Diego. That was just, and I don't know who I was talking to about it recently on my show. It's Ed White, actually. Ed White, he was in that game with the Chargers. Yeah, he said, that was the best football game I can ever remember watching in my lifetime.
Yeah, unfortunately, we lost that one. I missed 2 in overtime, which is not good.
Oh, maybe I shouldn't have brought this game up. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. I just got over that.
Well, if you'd made him, you might have gone on to host Wheel of Fortune like Ralph Benershka did. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Yeah, Ralph Benershka, of course. Looking back at it, you know, he and I shared something. Unfortunately, we both had a severe bout with ulcerative colitis. You know, he had it really bad, had the surgeries and removal of his, you know, intestines and all that. He got down to about 125 pounds. And that same thing happened to me. I didn't have to have the surgery, but I dealt with that for several years while I was playing. So
that's hard.
Might have been one of the reasons I got cut. I don't know. Of course, I had a bad year that last year. So Rolf was supposed to win that game. Looking back at it now, you know, that's just how it works. You know, I think because he missed one. He missed like a 20-something yarder in overtime.
Yeah.
And then I missed one, and then he came back and won it.
There's just so many great stories from that, and that's your 0-2. I wasn't I hadn't even known you were 0-2 till you brought it up. I apologize, but the lasting image of Kellen Winslow doing everything in that game, from blocking kicks and catching a gazillion balls and him having to carry him off the field, to Miami running a hook and ladder, which you never see anymore. I mean,
that was a great play.
That play.
That was a great play. Tony Nathan was the running back.
Yeah.
And we came back, and that was a great play. We had a play like that against Nebraska that worked for touchdowns. So that was a great play.
You see the whole gazillion laterals and stuff on plays, but that's not the same kind of play that's designed exactly like this one was to do exactly what it did. Right.
Exactly.
So as your career moves on, you end up with another great quarterback, or a great quarterback as far as the pros go, in Dan Marino, and make it to the Super Bowl in his rookie season or his second season? His rookie season.
Second
He
season. Came in '83, I think.
That's right. And he got the job shortly after.
He actually, got to tell you a funny story about that. We actually roomed together on the road his rookie year.
Oh yeah.
But he, when he first met me, he had he saw the Ohio State game. He didn't say a word. He just did this. That's how I met Dan.
That's awesome.
And
what kind of guy was Dan?
Another Dan story. I don't know if you remember when Dallas, what was that quarterback that played for him for so long now?
Smallback? Danny White?
No, the Romo.
Oh, Tony Romo. Yeah,
Tony Romo. When he was the holder and he dropped it and they didn't make it to playoffs or something, some big play like. And Dan Marino was talking about that. He said, when I first was a rookie with the Dolphins, I just wanted to get on the field, so I tried out for a kicker. And I mean for a holder. And after preseason, after the training camp, Coach Shula asked me, who do you want to hold? Of course, Don Strock was my holder the whole time. I go, not that Dan Marino. And he talked about that on the show.
Well, Strock did that job for years and years, right? I mean, that was one of his fortes, as well as being like, well, I guess Earl Morrow would have been maybe the first like relief quarterback, right? But Don Strock, I remember before Marino got there, coming in and winning a lot of games, replacing David Woodley and helping you guys along the way. So it was a really interesting dynamic with Don Strock there.
Sure was.
And I didn't know the part about him kind of, whispering in Shula's ear on the sideline during the game, but till I had read.
Yeah, he was always, if you see him, he was always right next to him. When we're in field goal range, he wanted me to be right behind him to tell him how far it is and all that kind of stuff. So, he was, that was a lot of fun. It was a rough time in being in Miami because they had the riots and of course the cocaine cowboys and they had all that. So we had to endure all that. And that was a tough time to be in Miami for sure. We played in the old Orange Bowl. Not
in the best neighborhood either.
Exactly.
Right? I've been there. I'm a Patriot fan and I've made a few road trips to Miami, and it's not a great place to be at night. I can tell you for sure, as you probably well know.
Right. So. That's why we lived up north.
Great idea. So in '84, Marino's second year, you guys have a tremendous year, obviously. Go to the Super Bowl again and lose to a really good San Francisco team. Nothing to be ashamed of there. I mean, it was a great season. You had to think you were going back. Well, you had mentioned you didn't feel you had that good a year, and you got cut after that year. Did you think that was going to be coming for you? I mean, I would have thought anybody on a team thought, "Oh, we got Dan Marino. We're going to go back to the Super Bowl a bunch of times," which didn't happen. But from a personal standpoint, did you think your job was in trouble at that point?
Yes. Because I had the last two seasons weren't so great, and so I kind of knew it might be coming. They actually drafted a kicker, Fuad Revez, and who beat me out. So So I sat out that year and then tried out for Cleveland. And I was with Cleveland for a while, and that I would have probably made that team, but I pulled a groin muscle, and that's about it when you do that as a kicker.
Yeah.
So I was done.
Yeah. So it's interesting having really no expectations of playing in the NFL, but then playing for 5 or 6 years, like 6 years, I think it was, right?
Yeah, 6 years.
And then it comes to an end. Were you ready for it to come to an end?
No.
Nobody's
ready when it comes to an end.
Yeah.
Nobody is, unless somebody like Tom Brady who can just decide whenever he wants to retire. So
I'll probably be in a urn here somewhere when Tom Brady retires. I'm guessing. He'll be 78 years old there playing quarterback for whatever team he's playing for then. Yeah. So after football, what got you over, not being in that competitive environment anymore? What did you turn to then?
I played a lot of competitive soccer.
Really?
Yeah.
Here?
In we have leagues in Oklahoma, so I played for a men's league and did that for a long time. But then my passion, I discovered my passion after football, and that was kids with disabilities and illnesses. And I worked for 2 children's hospitals in development and fundraising. So that's it's on my tombstone. It's not going to be the kick; it's going to be the kids.
Well, how long did you do that? Because I couldn't find any. I know you started in 2001 with the J.D. McCarthy Center, right?
J.D. McCarty, and then I went to the Children's Hospital in Bethany. So I did that for about 15 years.
Okay, very fulfilling work, I guess. Obviously, it would seem, and from your statements, you back that up. So great work. I'm glad that you were able to find the passion. And obviously when you compare that kind of work to, kicking the NFL or even being Tom Brady, I still think that kind of work is certainly much more important
yes,
in the grand scheme of things. So, and today, what are we doing today? We're just traveling the world playing golf. I mean, you text me the other day, I might play golf in the afternoon, and I'm looking at snow flurries. I wanted to text you back a couple of emojis you might not have liked, but
I play golf. I do my daily walk. I cycle occasionally. I used to cycle a lot. I do some tours. I did a big fundraiser for the J.D. McCarty Center where I crisscrossed Oklahoma 4 times and logged about 1,600 miles on my bike and raised a ton of money. And so I cycle some and then walk and play golf. And I live at a golf course. It's not a country club or anything, but I have a pretty good view of the golf course, and then I travel. In fact, I'm packing today to leave tomorrow. So
for a couple of weeks, you said you're just going to Germany. Were you going somewhere else? You told me, or just Germany?
I'm going to mostly Germany, but I'm going to make a side trip to Luxembourg, where I lived, and probably go to Amsterdam for a couple of days. I've never been to the Baltic Sea in Germany, so I'll go north in Hamburg and places like that.
Guessing what you told me about the weather, won't be any golf played on this trip. It doesn't sound like.
No.
Well, since I embarrassed you twice by first mispronouncing your name, which again I apologize for, Uwe, and I also embarrassed you by bringing up you missed 2 field goals in that San Diego playoff game. I'll ask you one more embarrassing question. What's your golf handicap? I'm
about a 10 handicap.
All right. Well, that's not embarrassing. That's good.
Yeah, I can do better, but I shoot in the high 70s, low 80s normally.
I heard somebody say that to me once before, and they said if it gets any warmer than that, they don't go out.
Yeah.
Listen, Uwe, I've enjoyed this time with you today. I appreciate you coming on, and as I said, I enjoyed your career, and I'm glad you're in good health today, and enjoying life. And I hope that continues. And best wishes to your son. I hope his dreams come true at some point too.
Exactly.
It'll be fun. So thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely, I really enjoyed it.
All right, you have a great trip.
Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right.
The great Uwe von Schamann. I will say his name correctly from here on out. I promise, Uwe. So a very interesting conversation, I thought, with Uwe. One of my great, when I grew up watching, I mean, kickers were always important, right? But kicking wasn't automatic like it is today. I mean, and these guys were very important cogs in the team. I meant to ask him about how much they included him in things. Probably a big oversight on my part, so I apologize for that, guys. Again, this was recorded on Wednesday, November 17th. So any comments you put up, I'll try to kind of respond to when this does air. I believe this show will air on Friday the 19th. And then we're going to have, I'm recording another show actually for the day after Thanksgiving as I'll be away. We'll be having some folks on to talk about, we're going to remember the ABA and the New York Nets of that time. And my guest will be Stephen Gold, who's a moderator of honoring and remembering the ABA in 1967 and 1976. And George Gerata, who is an ABA aficionado, especially New York Nets, and a big fan. And we had hoped to have Brian Taylor on to that show. And Brian messaged me last night that he won't be able to make it. But we're going to have him on at another time, and we'll talk with him. I enjoyed the ABA a lot, so I'm looking forward to it. So you'll see that show on Friday, the 26th. I'm right. Yeah, Friday the 26th, the day after Thanksgiving. So that won't be live either. But feel free to comment when you see this, either when it plays live and or when you see it in the groups that I share it to, which I thank you all for letting me do. And it was a great conversation with Uwe, and I'm really happy that we were able to make this happen. And we'll look forward to it. You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you live. When you're seeing this, I will see you live on Sunday, the 28th, with our live stream of consciousness show. And then the Friday after this, you'll see the ABA, remembering the ABA show. So thanks for joining me, guys. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.